All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary podcast. You can find the Billy Dees podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are found on your favorite platform. Today, we have on the studio line Maria Humphreys. Maria, how are you doing? Welcome to the program.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Billy. I'm really thrilled to have this conversation with you about podcasting, about social audio, about energy out here in the world, connecting. I love it.
Awesome. There's so many things that you do. We can't cover them all,
Mhm.
okay? But you have such an interesting blend of stuff. You have the meditation. You're very much into inspiration, inspiring stories. We're going to talk about your podcast, which is Strong Body, Strong Soul. You can be found on Twitter at SBSS, which kind of stands for, I presume, Strong Body, Strong Soul. For me, that's SBSS me on Twitter. Do check her out. And obviously, podcast, social audio. You have an excellent voiceover voice. Have you done voiceovers and things like that?
Well, I'm a meditation teacher. I got into podcasting several years ago, and it's really given me this newfound perspective on my voice, frankly. Yes. I think through podcasting and through the Insight Timer app, that's where my meditation offerings are. It's really given me such freedom to teach
Uh huh.
in a new way and reach people across the world. I
Yeah.
am such an audiophile, and I just have been coming into that more and more as time progresses. It's really amazing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, your podcast sounds excellent in so many ways, not only in content but in sound quality. So many podcasts, as I'm sure you know. I mean, they have great content, a lot of them, but they're not necessarily broadcast quality. You have a show that's just fantastic all the way around.
Oh, I
Um,
really appreciate you for saying that, but I do have to say it's been a a labor of love. At the beginning,
yeah.
you can hear definitely from my first episode till now, the progression in
Cool.
technology. I don't take anything down because I think sometimes the content is more important than
Sure.
the quality, of course. But,
Absolutely.
if I'm at a parade doing a podcast, of course, there's all the noise in there and it's part of the show. So it's really fun. Yeah.
Absolutely, content rules. And I've worked with a lot of people over the years, and some of the best broadcasters that I've worked with didn't know anything. Technically, they didn't even know what kind of microphone they were using.
Mhm.
But they just, you could hand them the phone book and they're going to read out of it and it's going to be entertaining. So content matters. I listened to your podcast for a little bit. You could talk about a lot of things on your podcast. You're really a fan of the entertainment industry. You mentioned the
Yeah.
Elvis movie. You mentioned Broadway, Tina Turner. What is your passion for entertainment? It seems like well, I can hear it in your voice when you talk about it. You really love it.
I do, I do, and, the older we get, the more different hats we have and different careers that we've gone through, but ever since I was a child, I've always been into music, and when I was in college, my major was communications. I thought about going into journalism. I actually worked in radio, in the promotions department, and, so I was the one driving around the 91X Bronco in San Diego, California, throwing out T-shirts at the surfing contest and stuff, and going to different events for the radio station. Loved it, but I never was on the mic at that time.
Yeah.
And then I went into, the theater business, actually. My office was in the Pantages Theater on the second floor. We run legit theaters, Pantages Theater, but the company started off in New York on
Okay.
Broadway. So that's my connection. That's why in my latest podcast episode, yeah, I'm talking about New York Broadway theater. And then I went into the concert industry from there. And so music is a huge part of my life too. I love lyrics, but the main thing I enjoy is the storytelling.
Yeah.
that comes through any type of entertainment, that human connection. And I think that's the most powerful thing about audio, regardless of your own personal experience or where you live on the planet. We can all relate to each other through storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's huge.
Absolutely. That kind of, I do want to talk a little bit about your meditation because that's something that's a big part of what you do.
Mhm.
And for the audience, and just so we're on the same page, what exactly, how would you define what meditation is?
Meditation is accessing your energy that you may have forgotten was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of people, they tend to associate meditation with relaxing, with falling asleep. And while it can do that, I mostly use it to invigorate and to energize and to gain clarity. The
Mm.
reason I started into meditation was because I was working with kids with bullying. And part of the meditation, the way I teach it, is empowering people to use their voice. So some of it is, sometimes it's chanting, sometimes it's writing, sometimes it's being silent, but most of the time we can always find a sound that is similar across the world, whether you're saying amen,
Hmm.
aum, shalom, or mama.
Yeah.
We all, as a human species, have this energy signature through our voices, through the vibration in our own bodies. And that's what connects us through audio. So, in such a powerful way.
That's a great connection. I've always felt that, and you've probably heard me say this before, but for the benefit of the audience, when you're a broadcaster or you're an audio professional and you're speaking into a professional microphone, the sound of your voice travels just a few inches
Mhm.
and it goes into someone's ear. It's a very intimate form of communication. Whereas with video, there's a camera that's several feet away. The microphone is
Yeah.
just kind of tagged on as an afterthought. And you can use your hand gestures, you can use pie charts, and you can use your looks for better or for worse. Some comedians
Mhm.
play off of odd looks, and of course attractive people use that to their
Yep.
advantage. You don't have that with
Right.
audio content. You have to speak from within.
Yes.
And the connection to what you're doing with meditation now seems like such a clear connection. I'm surprised that more people don't talk about it because it's a great connection, and I can understand why you use your voice as such a tool because you have this communicative way of speaking. You have this soft texture to your voice that I would imagine is just great for meditation. Is that primarily what your podcast is about? And tell us a little bit how you present your content in your podcast.
I would say it probably is about a 60-40 split
Mhm.
between the spiritual kind of discussions that I have on there. And then the other 40% is our interviews or recaps of workshops that I've gone to, or analyzing music lyrics and talking about my career in the music industry, or that last episode about, Broadway theater. It's not necessarily about meditation in any of those categories, even comedy. I mean, we've talked in the past, Billy, I love comedy.
Yeah,
And I think that there is a healing aspect to laughter.
well,
So
certainly.
whether even in that 40% of my content that may seem ridiculous, whether it's about my kids or what have you, it has that element of energy and connection and spirituality, even though I know I'm very well aware that my entire listenership is not necessarily interested in spirituality. In fact, that word alone might scare people away.
Mhm.
So I don't use it in every episode, but at the core of it, I'm talking about how we're all connected.
Yeah.
It runs through. Yeah.
Spirituality can mean a lot of things, and maybe that's kind
Mhm.
of what I'd like to explore with you. I can tell you what it means for me, just very briefly. I would have to say that I'm doubtful. That's not necessarily being a skeptic. I'm doubtful that there is a quote unquote spirit of any kind that is a being of its own. It's some sort of a creation on its own, and it's influencing the physical world. That's not to say that it's impossible. Einstein always said, "Don't dismiss anything."
Mhm.
But right now, we haven't been able to design an experiment that is repeatable, verifiable, that shows that there is some sort of a connection between some sort of a consciousness, a spiritual consciousness that's
Mhm.
affecting the world. So I don't necessarily, when I hear that, I don't necessarily go there. Where
Mhm.
I kind of go is, for example, the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, as near as we can tell, which means it's gone around the sun 4.5 billion times. And if we're lucky, if we are very lucky, we get 70 or 80 trips around the sun, and maybe a few more for some of us. The vast majority of us is going to be even less than that. So I believe that in this short journey, as what connects us as human beings is the fact
Mhm.
that we are here for a very limited amount of time.
Mhm.
And we share a commonality in that rather than finding so many ways to divide ourselves, finding so many ways to put you on that side of the fence and me on this side of the fence, whether it's our
Mhm.
culture, our religion, our country,
Mhm.
all these imaginary lines that we draw all over the world, um, that we should be connecting with one another and making our time here as pleasurable as possible. We should be helping each other do that. So when I hear spirituality from a humanistic standpoint, where I go with that is when I'm with someone who's feeling joy, I feel that with them. I think there's a human spirit there that I do feel and I do think is very real.
Mhm.
And my suspicion, and this is just a suspicion on my part, there's no question that as we developed speech, it was a good thing for us. It changed the structure of our brains and did a lot of other things. However, what it did do is it made us rely on spoken word. Whereas before, I know it's present.
Mm.
I know it's present in the animal kingdom where a lot of
Mhm.
animals can communicate when they're hunting and doing that. They can communicate with each other. And I kind of think that that spirituality in terms of our human connection, we've lost touch with that.
Mhm.
That's kind of my take on spirituality. How do you present spirituality when you talk about it?
No, that was a really eloquent way to put it. I love it. It reminds me of Joseph Campbell, actually, the way you're describing it, in terms of, I think, as a human species, we have lost touch with nature.
Yes.
And just like the animals, even the trees connecting, the aspen groves communicating with each other. The There's just so much of life that's in the ebb and flow of life. And there is this idea that it either has to be a benevolent power out there that's somehow there's this confusion that someone is controlling our lives.
Yes.
And I don't think that's the case. The first thing I want to say, though, when describing spirituality at all, is that it's very personal. I think that it's absolutely something that's fascinating to discuss and to learn and evolve and shift our perspectives. But I think the number one thing I always am telling people is that whatever you believe is correct.
Mhm.
It doesn't really matter what
Absolutely.
anybody else believes. I think that that energy, absolutely, when you enter a room, you can feel everyone else's energy, whether
Correct.
they like you or they're suspicious of you, or you get that. That's what I'm talking to kids about so often because we have that innately when
Mhm.
we're children,
Yes.
and we get programmed into forgetting and to be really guarded with who we are and trying so hard to fit in and be like everybody else that we start to lose sight of our own divinity.
Mhm.
I think all of us are part of the whole.
Yeah.
And I think we all benefit from being aware of that and rising up and having confidence in our own abilities.
Yes. Interesting. You mentioned stand-up comedy, and
Mhm.
I'll tell you what comes to me when you say that is I've done stand-up in the past,
Uh-huh.
and it's been a while. But I discussed certain things that happen on stage with headliners and the people who are really successful at being comedians, and they all agree. I don't know how this is possible.
Uh-huh. They
Uh,
all agree.
well, they all agree on this aspect
Uh-huh.
that a room collectively can have a personality. It's like whatever mood is, there's a certain mood that can take over
Mhm.
the room.
Mhm.
If the entire crowd can be hostile, the entire crowd can laugh at anything.
Uh-huh.
It's like they feed off of each other,
Mhm.
and you want to make sure that goes the right way. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it can sometimes be hard to turn around when it turns against you. So, would you agree with that? Have you had people talk about that aspect of it? How people's energy can sort of
Oh, absolutely.
a crowd can have the same personality.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's a tipping point where it happens too, and
Mhm.
from a spiritual standpoint, from the people that I've studied with for years in India, one of the things that they describe is a lake freezing.
Mhm.
There is a certain amount of ice that needs to form on the top of the lake, and then at some given moment, it all becomes solid,
Yes.
but it takes time to get there,
Mhm.
and it's that tipping point, and I think that's why yes, that's absolutely true, but if we're talking about the idea of manifestation or how prayer affects the world and ideas like that, we
Mhm.
wanna gravitate to people, to communities, to comedy clubs
Mhm.
that are of our same vibration.
Okay.
We don't I don't wanna go to a comedy club if they're all making fun of one particular person.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't like roast things like that. Some people do, and that's okay, but you choose where
Mhm.
you want to go, and I think that whether we're talking about meditation or prayer or standing up at the 7th inning stretch, we're all in unison at some point in our community.
Yeah.
And I think I mean, we can talk another time about the fine line between spirituality and religion.
Mhm.
I think there's misconception there as well.
Oh,
I
sure.
think obviously, when we need community, we want that lake to freeze over. We want that whole crowd to be laughing at our jokes.
Yes.
We want everyone to be a smile and a kind word can absolutely change someone's life. I mean, there are so many stories from suicide prevention about one person getting a kind word from
Absolutely.
someone they don't even know that
Yes.
prevents them from taking off from that rooftop.
Absolutely.
It's so important.
I always mention this too because I suicide awareness is something that I often talk about. And
Uh-huh.
I always tell people if you feel someone is acting in a manner where self harm might be an issue, say something.
Yeah.
Uh, I
Yeah.
know that there's a hesitation to say something because you're afraid you might give them an idea or whatever. Well, if that idea is already manifesting there, saying nothing is
Mhm.
far worse. Every study says it is
Yeah.
far worse. And sometimes just a kind word. Hey,
Mhm.
I noticed you're not, yourself today. Are you doing okay? Do you need to talk? That can save someone's life.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolute and either saying something or being the person that's listening.
Yes.
And I've been talking a lot with different people about the whole idea of speaking is very, very important. It's a human need to communicate.
Yes.
But part of communication is listening also.
Absolutely.
So I think for our podcasts, for instance, when we're producing content, it's so important to remember that we are not only helping each other,
Hmm.
but our voices are being recorded for the future for someone who may listen to our conversation and be affected in a positive way.
Yes.
And I think that that's so important to remember when you're putting out your voice into the world. It is a vibration, you cause a ripple effect. So you decide what kind of ripple you want to cause out into the world.
Yeah, that's a great message.
Yeah,
There's a responsibility that comes with
absolutely.
speaking, and
Absolutely.
listening, I would have to say, is a lost art. And you're familiar with the acting world, and one of the things that actors always say is good acting isn't delivering a line; it's listening to the other actor deliver his or her line.
Mhm.
And that's something that in practice, a lot of people don't do, realize.
Right,
Well,
right.
we all, I have a right to express my opinion and this and that, which is all great, but nobody talks about, we hear about free speech. We don't hear about free listening. That gets kind of
Yes.
forgotten about. Uh,
Yes, or you know what, the other thing is too, sometimes people can listen to things with the intention of finding something wrong with it,
oh, absolutely.
right? Especially when people feel pressure to
Hmm.
listen, for instance, to a bunch of podcasts. I have my list. I'm gonna listen to these 10 pods. If you're not that interested in them, or you're somehow trying to figure out what's wrong with them or how to be better than them, why waste your time?
Exactly.
Find the things that are gonna bring you joy and that are gonna help you elevate your podcasting game. You know, elevate and inspire each other with good stuff. Don't torture yourself trying
Yes.
to listen to things you know or you anticipate you're not gonna like. That's wasted time.
I really like your approach to audio content. I've been doing this a long time, and I got to tell you, you've already been an influence on me. So I mean,
Oh,
yeah, I really like that approach. So let's talk a little bit about what's available to the wider public now. And there's an emergence of what's being called social audio.
yes.
It started during the pandemic, I guess, with Clubhouse. It's made its way over to Twitter with Twitter Spaces. Spotify has a version of it. I believe they're calling it Spotify Live now.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about Twitter because we can't talk about them all, but in principle, they work pretty much the same. What you have with Twitter Spaces is you can open a space, which is audio only. There's no video.
Mhm.
And you have a host, and that host can maybe do a monologue or have a guest where they talk. And of course, everybody can run their space a little differently. And then at some point, you can open it up to the wider space. So different people can come up as speakers. If you join a space, I would advise listening to a few before you take part in one. But if you enter a space, they can see your account enter the space, but you don't have to participate. You don't have to accept the microphone. You can just listen, and you can leave at any time. No one's going to
Yes.
get mad at you, presumably, if you just leave. And that's all there is to it. You can either like the content or not. If you choose to participate, you request the microphone,
Yeah.
and the rest goes on from there. Your approach to that, and with all that you've just said, and I've noticed this in your spaces, and when you take part in these spaces, you are always so mindful of those who are listening. Do you want to talk about Twitter Spaces a little bit?
Well, let's back up for a minute because
Okay.
I'm not sure if your listeners, when we're talking about social audio, I think it's important to talk about it unassociated with any platform.
Okay.
Because I think the first question is why?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do social audio? Why would you participate?
Yes.
And there are two reasons to participate in social audio because you want to listen, you
Mm-hmm.
want to feel connected to other people around the world.
Right.
Like we were saying at the beginning, and the same is true with podcasting. I frankly see social audio as kind of almost replacing or being a huge part of podcasting. It's interactive, though. That is the element that makes it different.
Mm-hmm.
Now, everybody's out there on social audio for different reasons. Some people out there are out there for their business. They're trying to improve their sales. They're trying to gain credibility for their coaching practices.
Sure.
They're trying to enhance their businesses. Social audio is not something that you do to make money.
Mm-hmm.
It's to enhance your whatever you are doing with your life. The same thing, whether that's from a business perspective or a relationship perspective. I was laughing. I was listening to some people the other day and they were saying how this couple, and it happens with every couple, of course, where You find different things that you're interested in, and your partner is tired of listening to it, right? So the big joke is in podcasting, for instance, right? Guys will start, or girls will start a podcast because they want to talk about football, damn it. And
Yeah,
their wife is tired of hearing about it. Or vice versa. The wife wants to talk
sure.
about cooking or whatever. Um, and so social audio gives you that outlet,
Yep.
frankly. And you can meet people out there in the world that do have similar interests. And just like Billy you just said, you can go into these social audio platforms of any sort and you can just listen first. And then you can see if you have the confidence, which I encourage you guys, please, if you feel like you would benefit from speaking in the world, sharing your feelings, sharing your opinion about something, sharing your experience that might help someone else. Maybe you're an addict that has been clean and sober for 20 years. And maybe there are people out there that would be inspired by your story.
Yeah.
If you feel inspired to speak, like you just said, Billy, I think it's a responsibility.
Yes.
If you have the capacity to do it, I think it's really important. The other part of that is if you don't feel inclined to speak, I mentioned this a lot on Twitter Spaces, on any of these platforms. Share the space on your own social media or type comments in there or tag friends that may enjoy that conversation, even if your voice isn't on there.
Hmm.
Help spread the energy of the hosts that are putting a lot of their lives and energy into trying to help people, because that's why a lot of us are out here.
Yeah.
We're trying to help people. We're trying to share. My podcast is a full range of so many different topics, and I do that on purpose because I want people to figure out what their ranges are.
Yeah.
Nobody is happy all of the time.
Oh, yeah.
And no one is crawled in a corner depressed all of the time.
Yeah.
If they can find a glimpse of happiness out in that world and be drawn out of that corner, even for a few minutes, then my job is done.
Yeah. Those are great points. She, and I think you and I have a tendency to go by our first names because we're so used to being in spaces together. We refer
Yeah,
to each other to the audience. So I say Maria. Um,
yeah, yeah,
but Maria brings up a fantastic point about content. With any type of content, you have to decide what you want to do.
yeah,
There's certain types of spaces or audio, social audio platforms that are going to work well for certain types of content, and with others, maybe not so much. I would have to say, podcasting as we know it, my opinion, and who knows how things are going to go, but I think long form audio podcasts, like I say long form because we run about half hour, 45 minutes here, and they're very dialed in. And I
hmm
think for information and certainly the on demand nature of podcasting, any type of thing where somebody wants to get value from something while they are doing something else,
hmm
while they're on the treadmill, while they're communicating. I feel that podcasting has a pretty strong niche there. My
yeah,
listenership, for example, is really strong in the morning, really strong at noon, which tells me lunchtime, you know. And for me anyway, I believe that social audio is a way to augment that.
yes.
A
And
lot.
the ability to pause and go
Yes,
back to a podcast.
yes,
In social audio, you can't pause the people that are having a conversation,
yes.
but you can go listen to the replay. And in that respect, it's a little bit like a podcast.
Sure.
But yeah,
The only my only question with that is that I've noticed that you will listen to a lot of stuff live that you won't necessarily listen to on the replay. Like
right.
these rooms go on sometimes. They're 10 minutes before anybody actually says anything. Oh, hi Maria, how are you today? How's the weather there? And boy, my dog ran away today, and I was all looking all over the neighborhood. Okay, you'll listen
Not
to
in my spaces.
it. Well, that's good.
I'm kind of boring like that. I get right to the point.
That's good because I'll tell you, and this is a not a pet peeve, but these podcasts that have these intros that are like 5 minutes long.
Yeah.
Get to it. When
Yeah.
especially a new listener, they're going to give you like maybe 8 seconds. With video, it's 8 seconds.
Can I pipe in on that for just a
Absolutely, go
second
right
too?
ahead.
What happens too is sometimes when podcasters know each other, but the audience doesn't know who they are,
Exactly, sure.
and then they go on about their personal lives a little bit, and the audience feels left out, frankly, and that's why I like to talk to the audience. They are what matters, you
Yes,
know? So, there's that leaving people feeling left out. A lot of
yes,
people on social audio, they've been telling me I've been hearing comments about they feel like the people in the space or on Wisdom, whatever platform you're on, they feel like everybody's already friends, and
yes.
so they don't belong there.
That's a
And
great
that's the
point. So
last thing we want.
yes, that is such a great
So,
point. So getting back to content,
yeah.
content marketing in general, the idea that you're gonna put forth information that people are going to find useful. Being honest and genuine, as Maria talked about in this case, is not only the ethical thing to do, but it is a great marketing strategy. If people listen to your space or whatever it is that you are doing and they find you genuine,
Mhm.
then they will take the next step to listen to your podcast or buy your book or listen
Yeah.
to your music or whatever. So I think that's such a valuable thing. And one thing you don't want to do, and I preach this to a lot of my clients, is that you don't want to sound like an infomercial. Do you have an
Right.
opinion about that? Because I know we've heard them. All you
Oh,
have
yeah.
to do, I'm glad you came to my space today. And keep in mind, if you want to find out more about this, you can check out my online lesson, which is okay.
Yes, 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 and that has happened to me going into a space. It almost feels like when I ask a question, like I'm interrupting their plan.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm intruding on their time. They have their plan, and especially with audio, frankly, when it's audio only, you really notice that they're reading off script,
Yes.
and it's not coming naturally. And
Exactly.
they're very intent. Even on an interview, when people are doing an interview, sometimes they'll listen to the person's response and then they'll go, and then they'll read the next question. And
Yeah.
it doesn't have anything to do with what the person just said. And it's so obvious. It's
Right.
just, it's, it's fine. Everybody creates what they enjoy listening to. I can't stress that enough.
Absolutely.
I don't enjoy listening to scripted conversations between people
Yeah.
like that. I prefer more of a free flow, but it also drives me crazy if they're a little too free flow
Yeah.
and they're drinking beer in their kitchen and talking about, whatever.
Exactly. Sure.
I won't listen to that either. So there's a happy medium in there somewhere for everybody.
Yeah, I'm really in touch with that. Most of my podcasts, what I tell people is we don't want it to sound scripted. We don't want it to sound like an infomercial. But a lot
Yeah.
of times, especially people who have been through a trauma, they have these steps in their recovery that I, as you know, putting to get this together, I don't want to miss. So
Mhm.
I'll hit little, little bullet points or something for myself
Yeah.
so that I can know that here again, I'm at least I'm anchored, and we don't end up talking about
Yes.
the Browns or something,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so that you stay on point, and especially when you're talking about something that, in my case, I don't do podcasts that go on for hours. I like short, very valuable
Yes.
pieces of information. So I want to hit those points. I want to do it in a way that is very organic
Yes.
and helpful. So I'm very much in tune with everything you are saying. Now, I mentioned you are on Twitter, and once again, that's at SBSS for me, and that's at SBSS for me on Twitter. And I'm going to say that follows the title of your podcast, which is Strong Body, Strong Soul. I would strongly recommend checking out Maria's podcast. It's fantastic. It sounds wonderful. Where else can people find you online? And maybe you want to talk about some of the not only on Twitter Spaces, but some of the audio platforms that you are doing. I know you do
Sure.
Wisdom and all those others. Yes.
Right. I'm on Clubhouse. My handle on Clubhouse is at Maria Speaks. And I have a club on Clubhouse called Strong Body, Strong Soul. I have not been on Clubhouse in about a year. And I
Wow.
just started getting back onto it in the last month, probably. So I haven't really paid attention to that club there very much. I kind of got overwhelmed. One of the things about social audio, any kind of social media, you guys all know this, you can get overwhelmed and you can have that feeling of missing out, right? Especially, I think, with audio. That is one of the reasons why Clubhouse did so well during the pandemic because of isolation, right?
Yeah.
People needed to feel connected. People were actually listening to Clubhouse rooms for 12-hour lengths of time,
Oh,
going to bed with their phone next to their head, being depressed the next day because their phone ran out of power.
yeah.
It is very addictive.
Yeah.
That is one of the reasons I love, Billy, what you just said. You know, you don't like your podcast to be too long, and I am the same way.
Mhm.
I think that our attention span to be able to absorb a quality conversation, whether you are taking notes or whether you have your eyes closed and you're listening to somebody tell a story that really resonates with you, there are many reasons to listen.
Yes.
But I don't know if I don't need to listen for longer than an hour. That's kind of my top.
Yeah.
Um, and everybody's different. Everybody's different, of course. So I'm on Clubhouse. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram as Maria Humphreys. Strong Body, Strong Soul, actually, on Instagram. Strong Body, Strong Soul on Instagram. I am an amateur photographer as well. So that's why I love Instagram. I love posting beautiful photography. I also really enjoy, actually, get ready, TikTok.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna have to find your
And
account because I'm on there.
well, I have two TikTok accounts. Okay. One is Maria Humphreys, and the other one is Strong Body, Strong Soul.
Okay.
The reason I have two accounts is because the Strong Body, Strong Soul account, you will not see my face on there. You
Mm.
will only see my photography and my videos, and you will hear short meditations or brief insights on nature with my voice on there, because the idea is to get free samples of my voice out there
Yeah.
to help people find some calm and peace in their lives. That's the real reason. But ultimately, it's also to have them get a sample of my voice so they can decide if they want to go to the Insight Timer app, which is a free meditation app on your iPhone or Android. It's on everywhere. It's free. I am a teacher on the Insight Timer app. It is free, but you can send thank you donations
Yeah.
to the teachers on there that you enjoy. So that is one way that a passive income comes through for me,
Yeah.
which I so appreciate because all of this tech cost money. Of course, the podcast, I don't earn money from the podcast. I have had sponsorships and I have some right now coming in, but it's not very much. So
Yeah.
it's interesting because I think the more we give, the more we receive. And I think when we're leaving a legacy for our kids, and like the beginning, when we were talking about your idea of spirituality, right?
Mhm.
We don't know where we go, but we know that we will live in the hearts of our kids
Mhm.
and the people who have loved us and have experienced us in their lives. And the amazing magic of audio is the ability to record.
Yeah.
When I'm not here, people, my kids are going to be able to hear me laugh. They're going to hear me saying kind things
Yeah.
to my friends out here. And you guys are all my friends. I
Yes.
don't need to know your name. I don't need to know how far my voice is traveling to know that it is going to get to where it's supposed to go.
Yeah. That is such a fantastic message.
Yeah.
And I should point out that for not uh, for any reason other than just to consider when you get on social media and you throw hate at somebody, uh, whether it's calling them names or putting their lifestyle down or whatever, you got to keep in mind that lasts forever as well. And you can delete it, but in this digital world, it's
Yeah.
it's always somewhere. So you
Yeah.
always want your legacy and your digital legacy to be
Mhm.
something that's positive, whether you have a formal program like Maria does, or whether you're just simply on one of these platforms talking to people. You want to affect people in a positive. That's my personal view anyway. I'm not
Yeah.
telling you what to do, but the positive way is the way that to me has the most powerful impact on people. And that's kind of what I do anyway. I try to
Yes.
keep that in mind. Is it 10 or 15 years from now, is somebody going to read this tweet and say, man, that guy was a real SOB, you know?
Right, right, and let me say also too, just, from a practical manner of speaking, sometimes, for years now, of course, social media, the whole idea of taking things down. When you are looking for a job,
Yeah.
they are starting to go through your social
Oh,
media.
yeah.
So put stuff out there that you're proud of. You don't
Yeah.
know. Treat every piece of content, every action you take as if you're in an interview. Show your best all of the time.
Yes.
That's what I think.
Well, that's a great message, Maria. I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Mm,
I really enjoyed talking to you. A whole new and what I said about your approach is, in this business, and we talk about the equipment. We mentioned about the investment and stuff. Just to let the audience know, to take part in one of these platforms, you don't need to spend. If you have the
right.
ability to get on Twitter, you have the ability on your
Yes.
phone. It's not on desktop yet, but on your phone, if you have the ability to
Yeah.
participate in Twitter or Clubhouse or any of those things, you don't need anything else. All you need is great content. And unless you want to start doing these things, professionally or in some way to augment what you're doing with your business, you don't need a lot of investment to take part in these things. So
Well,
first of all,
Billy,
feel
can
free to
I
do that.
can I say too, there's
Sure.
no pressure to create content.
Yes, you can listen.
Join the platforms so that you can listen and
Yeah.
give Billy and other great people out there encouragement, because you will get value even if you don't create. I think that's a misconception too. When
Absolutely.
you join, you don't have to ever, ever, ever host a room or even speak in a room to get value.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say this here again about you. What really strikes me with you is being in this business for as long as I have. I have worked with some of the best technicians and broadcasters out there. And I think what's unique about you, I've known a few, but what's unique about you is you have this humanistic approach to how you package it up. And so many of the broadcasters that I've worked with have been about, listen to me, a morning drive power mix 95, the great hits right here. Da, 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 da.
Right.
And yeah, and I guess I have the classic rock voice. I
Yes,
so
you
I say,
do.
coming up right now, Led Zeppelin, but you have this humanistic approach to audio, and that what makes it unique. And like I said, you do inspire me, and you have affected the way I approach content. So thank
Oh,
you very much.
thank you so much. And if you guys listen to any of my spaces or wisdom talks or what have you, once in a while, I'll title it "Listen to Me."
Yeah,
Like, because it is so funny how, yeah, it's like, if only everyone would just listen to me and do what I say. That
yeah.
is so not how I teach. That's so
Well,
not how I operate in the world. But
well, to quote you in terms of energy, you have great energy. We've been talking to Maria Humphreys. Check her out on Twitter at SBSS for me on Twitter. Now you can find me on Twitter as well at Billy Dees. I'm not as sweet and nice as Maria is, but
not all the time.
but you can find me on there as well at Billy Dees. You can also find the podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are found: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora and our good friends over at Good Pods. Do check us out. I'm Billy Dees. Thank you very much for listening to the podcast, and we will talk to you again next week.
Bye.
I'm Billy Dees and host of the self-titled podcast, The Billy Dees Podcast. We are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast featuring authors and creators talking about their craft, advocates for community issues, and myself and an array of co-hosts discussing current events. There's no partisan ranting and raving going on here, just great content. You can find the Billy Dees Podcast on your favorite platform and on Twitter at Billy Dees. Thank you, and I hope you listen in.